There are phrases that seem simple, yet carry such intense psychological impact that they can leave a narcissist stunned. No yelling, no arguing, and no emotional turmoil is needed to reclaim your self-respect. Sometimes it's your calmness, your self-control, and your short, clear responses that become the most powerful antidote to their toxic manipulation. In today's video, you'll discover seemingly harmless replies that hold the power to dismantle a narcissist's entire control strategy, from "Is that so?" to "I don't care anymore," and why these phrases can throw them off balance, trigger their rage, and gradually strip them of their power. This isn't a dry psychology lecture. It's a roadmap to help you step out of the emotional maze they worked so hard to trap you in. And if you've ever felt drained from endless arguments, if you felt like you had to constantly explain yourself, prove your worth, or exhaust yourself just to maintain a sliver of peace, then this video is for you. We'll dive into applied psychology, emotional liberation, and the art of non-reactive responses strategies that don't just shield you from emotional destruction, but help you reclaim the dignity that was once stolen from you. Watch until the end, because even mastering just one of these phrases can completely shift the power dynamic in any toxic relationship. And if you find value in what we share, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join us on this journey of healing, awakening, and inner freedom. This isn't just about dealing with narcissists, it's about becoming the unshakable version of yourself. Part 1. Is that so? 2 words that leave the manipulator breathless. Is that so? Just 2 words, yet powerful enough to silently collapse the narcissist's rage and inflated ego. There are moments when silence echoes louder than any scream. And there are phrases, short, seemingly harmless, that shatter a manipulator's psychological framework more effectively than any argument or confrontation ever could. In the narcissist's world, a realm fueled by reactions, control, and covert power plays the phrase, "Is that so?" spoken with calmness, without sarcasm, without submission, becomes the most unexpected and disarming blow. Why? Because narcissists are not seeking truth. They're seeking emotional control. They don't want logic. They want your emotional chaos. Your anger, your defensiveness, your attempts to explain these are the fuel that feeds their sense of power. Every time you push back, they feel validated. They throw jabs, you react. They hit your vulnerabilities, you crumble. And before you know it, you've been trained to live in defense mode, constantly justifying yourself, caught in a script they've carefully written. What you may not realize is that your emotional turmoil is the very ecosystem they need to survive. But when you simply look at them steady and unfazed, and calmly say, "Is that so?" the entire system crashes. That phrase doesn't deny, nor does it agree. It invites no debate, no emotional investment, no stage for the victim-villain drama. It stands there like a quiet wall, unyielding, impenetrable. And that non-reaction becomes the harshest truth for someone who feeds off the illusion of control. "Is that so?" isn't just a neutral response, it's emotional freedom in disguise. It's your silent declaration, "I'm not playing this game anymore. I see it. I understand it. And I choose not to engage." This phrase becomes your spiritual qigong, a meditative shift that pulls you out of the reactive spiral and anchors you back into inner control. The more silent you are, the more frantic they become. They try another bait. They escalate their tricks. But you remain still. That's when you've gone beyond emotional disengagement. You've illuminated their dysfunction with the light of your self-awareness. In front of a third party, their mask slips. Why? Because their ego cannot survive in isolation. It only thrives if someone is willing to reflect it back, to give it space to validate its illusion of power. And in the absence of your emotional participation, all that remains is a void. What makes this strategy so powerful is its deep philosophical nature. You are practicing the art of non-reaction, one of the most essential skills in trauma recovery. This is not avoidance, this is strength. When you can remain calm under emotional attack, you don't just master yourself, you reclaim control of the conversation. You stop letting them set the tempo of your emotions. And that is what narcissists fear the most, losing command of the stage. Is that so becomes a lesson in self-worth? You're not lowering yourself to argue. You're not using logic to convince someone who doesn't care about the truth. You're not playing defense in a game designed to drain you. You are no longer in the desperate state of needing to be understood. Because you've understood enough about them and about yourself to know that peace is not found in explanations. It's found in the wise act of stepping away. When you master this art, you'll feel the shift within you. No more sleepless nights thinking I should have said this or that. No more urges to clarify your side. Because you've accepted the most liberating truth, narcissists aren't seeking clarity, they're seeking chaos. And you are no longer here to serve that chaos. Next time they drop a jab trying to start an emotional war, pause. Take a breath and simply say, "Is that so?" No follow-up, no breakdown, not even a raised eyebrow. Just the grounded presence of someone who is no longer controlled by old wounds. You've stepped off the stage they used to direct, and now you're the one writing the script of your own life. Part 2. That's your opinion. When you take back the power to define yourself from a narcissist, you're entitled to your opinion, a phrase so gentle yet powerful enough to make a narcissist feel like they're no longer the center of your universe. Not every battle requires swords and shields. Some victories belong to those who remain calm, who are strong enough not to step into a game designed to ensure their defeat from the very start. And when dealing with a narcissist where every word is laced with manipulation, every comment disguised as constructive criticism, one of the most powerful responses you can give is simply, "You're entitled to your opinion." This phrase isn't agreement. It's not an admission that their criticism is valid. And it's certainly not a way to dodge conflict. It's a clear declaration I don't need to win in your eyes because I no longer live under your definition of who I am. A narcissist doesn't just want to have an opinion, they want their opinion to be your truth. They don't merely offer judgments, they demand to be the judge, jury, and executioner in the courtroom of your life. When they say things like, "You're too sensitive," or "Everyone thinks you're not good enough," they're not sharing insights. They're carving your identity with the sharp edge of their false superiority, all while hiding behind a polite smile. And do you know what shakes them to their core when you don't argue back? Because to the narcissistic mind, your reaction is their lifeblood. They deliver a calculated blow, then wait. Wait for you to defend, justify, or crumble. And when you do, they win. Not because they're right, but because you're still dancing on the stage they built. But when you simply smile or respond with quiet composure, you're entitled to your opinion. It's like gently closing the door to their emotional control room. You don't yell. You don't strike back. You don't scramble to look unbothered. You simply say, "I see you're trying to convince me, but I no longer need to be convinced." That phrase is emotional freedom in action. It releases you from the pressure to explain. It honors your personal value without needing to tear anyone down. Most importantly, it draws an invisible boundary. I no longer live in a world where you are the center. Psychologically, this hits a fragile nerve in the narcissist's core, their obsession with emotional dominance. They can't handle being ignored. They can't stand the reality that you can hear them without being shaken by them. When you stop reacting, they begin to feel invisible. And for a person whose ego survives only through reflection from others, that's a form of inner collapse. But here's the key: how you say it matters. Not with spite, not with arrogance, not with contempt, but with calm, grounded certainty. That's what makes this phrase cut like a blade but flow like water. You're not trying to hurt them. You're simply refusing to be pulled down. You're entitled to your opinion isn't just a response, it's a life philosophy. It reminds you. Not every judgment deserves an answer. Not everyone's opinion deserves a seat at the table of your self-worth. No one gets to be the mirror of your identity, but you. This phrase trains you in one of the most vital skills in today's chaotic world: emotional self-regulation. You learn to stop being shaped by others' perceptions. You learn to stop linking your worth to their words. You realize you don't need to win an argument because you've already walked away from the board they rigged against you. And when you do this in front of others, the effect multiplies. The narcissist doesn't just lose control, they lose face. Not because you humiliate them, but because your composure makes their drama look cheap. In a world that encourages people to speak up and clap back, sometimes the most refined response is a gentle phrase backed by unshakable stillness. Because you're not just refusing to answer, you're refusing to play. So the next time someone, especially a person who seeks to manipulate or control you, says something that strikes at your self-worth, don't waste your energy reacting. Hold your gaze, breathe steadily, and say, you're entitled to your opinion. Not because you agree, but because you no longer need agreement to exist. Part 3. That doesn't work for me. The soft phrase that slices through the illusion of control. That doesn't work for me. It sounds gentle, but it can shake the entire illusion of control a narcissist depends on. There are rejections that don't need to be loud, don't need to be aggressive, yet they carry the strength to end an entire cycle of manipulation. There are boundaries that don't require walls, just a single, clear sentence. That doesn't work for me. And if you've ever been pulled into a relationship where you were always the one bending, always the one accommodating, always sacrificing your comfort and self-respect, then this is the phrase you need to memorize like a life-saving mantra. To a narcissist, every interaction is a stage, and they insist on being the director. They want you to play your part, the submissive one, the agreeable one, the tolerant one. They bet on your silence out of fear of conflict. They assume you'll nod out of fear of rejection. And they live in the illusion that if they keep talking long enough, you'll comply. But when you stop, no arguing, no justifying, no explaining, and calmly say, that doesn't work for me, you're not just declining a request. You're rejecting the entire mechanism of control they've tried to install in your life. You're not saying it to pick a fight. You're not insulting anyone. You're not yelling to overpower them. You're simply standing up for yourself in the quietest, most grounded way possible. And that's exactly what terrifies them the most. Because that phrase accomplishes what no shouting match, no eloquent defense ever could. It takes back the control they assumed was theirs. In behavioral psychology, there's a crucial truth. Manipulators aren't afraid of loud rejection. They're afraid of quiet certainty. Because in that stillness, there's no crack for them to slip into. They can't guilt you. They can't twist your words. They can't use your emotional storm to regain control. All they're left with is a closed door held firm by self-respect. And the most frightening part for them, there's nothing they can do about it. They might get angry. They might demand answers. They might feign hurt. But you're no longer on the stage. You're not in the same script. You're not playing the role they cast for you. And when they finally see that the power they thought they had over you collapses. That doesn't work for me as the voice of someone who has learned to listen to their inner truth. You're no longer saying yes just because someone expects it. You're no longer tolerating discomfort just to keep others comfortable. You've realized that you don't need to hurt anyone in order to protect yourself. This phrase is more than a boundary. It's a psychological reset. It tells the world I have limits. Not because I'm cold, not because I'm cruel, but because I've matured enough to know anything that costs me my inner peace is too expensive to accept. It also sends a message narcissists never want to hear. I'm no longer conditioned to please you. That means you're no longer easy to control. You've shifted from reacting to choosing. And in a narcissist's world where they thrive on others, bending someone who walks away is a true threat. What's more terrifying to someone who needs to control others than facing someone who can no longer be manipulated? The answer, nothing. So when you say, that doesn't work for me, you're not just setting a boundary. You're delivering a message with deep roots. I choose me. And the beautiful thing, you don't need to explain why. because you no longer live in a reality where you must ask permission to be yourself. You've stepped out of the trap of guilt-based communication, the fear of abandonment, the need for approval. You say one sentence, "No, that doesn't work for me," and you walk away without fear, without regret. As you begin to say this more often, you'll notice a shift in your energy. You'll feel less shaken. You'll realize that not everyone deserves access to the sacred space of your inner calm. And you'll understand clarity is not cruelty. Composure is not coldness. And saying no is not unloving. It's simply this: you respect yourself. So next time someone, whether it's a partner, a family member, or anyone who once held emotional power over you, makes a request, an offer, or a move that threatens your inner peace, take a deep breath. Look them in the eye with all the respect in the world, and say clearly, gently, without a hint of fear, "That doesn't work for me." Then walk away. And don't look back. Because in that moment, you've just done what some spend their whole lives trying to learn. You've protected yourself without apology. Part 4. I don't take things personally anymore. When you become immune to emotional manipulation. I don't take things personally anymore. It's the moment you reclaim your emotional autonomy and pull the plug on the narcissist's power source. There comes a point in your healing journey when you stop trying to win, stop needing to be understood, and stop reacting the way you once did. That's when you can look at criticism's subtle jabs or disguised helpful feedback without flinching. Instead, you quietly think, "This has nothing to do with me anymore." That is the moment you step into true freedom, the realm where provocations, emotional traps, and toxic attempts to pull you in suddenly lose all meaning. Narcissists aren't afraid of angry people, they fear those who are no longer emotionally controlled. And one of the greatest milestones in recovery from psychological manipulation is learning to see through harmful behavior, without letting it become part of your identity. They might call you selfish, say you're too sensitive, blame you for everything. Once that would have sent you spiraling hours over analyzing days, questioning yourself, weeks of guilt. But now, you've learned the truth. What people say about you says far more about them than it does about you. And when that realization lands, you become unshakable. I don't take things personally anymore. Isn't indifference. It's the sign of a mind no longer living under someone else's emotional reign. It's emotional maturity. It's the quiet confidence of someone who no longer bends to please, no longer twists themselves to avoid judgment. One of the most calculated tools in a narcissist's arsenal is weaponized criticism. They know your weak spots, your fear of being misunderstood, your pain around inadequacy, your craving for validation. They shoot at those wounds like emotional snipers. One well-placed comment can leave you bleeding invisibly. But when you stop absorbing those shots, not because you're numb, but because you've finally recognized who the real problem is, their weapon loses all power. Not reacting doesn't mean you're submitting. Not taking it personally doesn't mean you're weak. On the contrary, it's the most powerful message you can send. You no longer get to shape my emotions. Imagine this: someone says to you, "You're never good enough." In the past, that might have broken you. Now you simply look at them and think, that feeling belongs to you. I don't have to carry it anymore. You're not angry. You don't need to forgive. You're just no longer connected to that energy. This is what emotional sovereignty looks like, where no one else decides your mood, your confidence, or your self-worth. I don't take things personally anymore isn't a mantra. It's a skill one forged through tears, scars, and the realization that reacting never brought peace, only more control to the manipulator. Until one day, you choose differently. You choose calm. You choose to conserve your energy. You choose to keep yourself. And from that space, something strange happens. You become invisible to manipulators, because there's nothing left for them to exploit. They push your buttons and nothing moves. You don't explode. You don't retreat. You don't apologize. You're simply untouched. That's the power of disidentification, when you no longer let someone's chaos infect your inner peace. And the more grounded you are, the clearer you become. You no longer need to prove you're right. You don't need to push anyone away, because you understand this one truth. Truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be lived. This becomes especially crucial when facing someone who once manipulated you. They'll test you again. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being cold. But deep down, you know what's really happening. You're coming back home to yourself. The phrase, "I don't take things personally anymore," is proof that you've learned a painful but priceless lesson. Your peace no longer depends on someone else's permission. And when you begin living from that space, all control fails. Every trap becomes irrelevant. Every manipulation game loses its appeal, because you've awakened, and there's no turning back. Part 5. That's your opinion. When you step away from the battle, they crave. That's your opinion. A gentle phrase that quietly declares the manipulator no longer holds the power to define who you are. There comes a point in life where you realize you don't need to shout to reclaim your voice. You don't need to win an argument to prove your worth. Sometimes all it takes is to stand firm, breathe steadily, and calmly say, "That's your opinion," and nothing more. Because somewhere along the painful journey of those who've lived under the shadow of narcissists, they all learn a bitter truth. A manipulator's opinion isn't just offered, it's carefully crafted to reshape how you see yourself. When they call you selfish, they're not just giving feedback, they're planting seeds of guilt. When they say, "Everyone finds you difficult," it's not a neutral comment. It's a calculated blow meant to make you doubt your very being. Every word, every glance, every passive-aggressive remark is a weaponized tool designed to turn subjective judgment into undeniable truth. And if you react, you're pulled into the game. But if you don't get angry, don't defend yourself, don't rush to fix your image, and instead you simply smile and say, "That's your opinion," you've just done something profoundly powerful. You've rejected their label. Because in that phrase you are separating yourself from their judgment. You're not denying their right to feel what they feel, but you are also not giving their feelings the power to define your identity. This is how you protect your inner boundaries, without aggression, without insult, but with unwavering clarity. And that is what narcissists cannot handle. Narcissists don't live by truth, they live by emotional control. They need you to react. They need you to defend yourself. They need you to try to fix their perception of you. Every time you explain yourself, it sends a message. Your opinion matters to me more than my peace. But when you respond with a calm, neutral, and grounded, "That's your opinion," the game ends. No reaction, no fuel for manipulation, no rebuttal to twist. They're left suspended in the void where their illusion of power used to exist but now evaporates. This phrase is also a declaration of one of the most profound forms of emotional maturity. You no longer allow others to define you. You don't live to please. You don't need to be accepted. You're not here to fit the mold someone else created. You are the only one with the right to define who you are. And the best part is, you can say it with peace. No raised voice, no resentment, no angry retreat. You can stand your ground, look them in the eye, and speak it like it's the most natural truth in the world. Because it is. It's just their opinion. And you no longer feel the need to make that opinion the center of your universe. Saying, "That's your opinion," also helps you maintain emotional detachment. It gives you space to respond instead of react. In that space, you're no longer the victim of their anger, no longer caught in emotional whirlpools they trigger. You remain aware of who you are, and you choose to protect that not with resistance, but with sovereign grace. Philosophically, this marks the shift from an external frame of reference living for validation from others to an internal frame of reference living in alignment with your core values. And within this frame, you no longer need agreement to feel whole. You don't need anyone's approval to know your worth. You don't have to be right in everyone's eyes, just honest in your own. And that is what a narcissist can never grasp, because you've become untouchable. So next time someone throws a cruel comment or delivers a harsh, self-righteous judgment, pause, take a breath. Look at them in the eye, not with hatred, not with submission, and say, "That's your opinion." Then walk away, carrying your peace. No drama, no aftermath, no extra words needed. Because here's the truth. Their opinion no longer has the authority to shape your life. Part 6. I'm not available for this conversation. When you refuse to be fuel for their power game. I'm not available for this conversation. A quiet phrase that shuts the very door. A manipulator thought they still held the keys to. Some conversations are never meant for understanding. They exist to control. They aren't meant to connect, they're meant to dominate. They don't seek resolution. They exist to drain you of your peace, your clarity, your energy. If you've ever found yourself in a repetitive argument where every explanation is twisted, every response dismissed, and the more you speak, the more wounded you become, then you've experienced a covert form of manipulation, conversations designed to destroy boundaries. And in those moments, one simple phrase holds the power to set you free. I'm not available for this conversation. No yelling, no accusations, no storming off. Just the quiet truth: I don't need to continue this to prove anything. I have the right to protect my peace. In relationships with narcissists, conversations often morph into never-ending word wars. They don't listen to understand. They listen to distort, to invalidate, to flip the narrative. They lay verbal traps, dragging you into emotional exhaustion where you're constantly defending, justifying, and eventually doubting yourself. But then one day you wake up. You realize not every conversation deserves your energy. Some dialogues exist only to drag you back into old roles, the one who pleases, the one who proves, the one who isn't allowed to walk away. But when you calmly say, "I'm not available for this conversation," you do something a narcissist dreads: you unplug their emotional vacuum. Because they don't want resolution. They want repetition. They want you stuck in a loop, tense, guilty, enraged, until you reopen the door just to escape the unbearable weight of silence. But when you choose the pause, you control the narrative. I'm not available for this conversation is also a high-level emotional intelligence move. It means you've matured past the need to resolve everything on the spot. It means you've found the courage to prioritize inner peace over being right. It means you've learned that silence can be more powerful than retaliation. And that's something the manipulator cannot handle. They expect you to break, to explain until you're drained, to play in the chaos they know how to command. But when you gently sever the dialogue and step back from the power play, their entire manipulation strategy crumbles into irrelevance. Let's be clear, this is not avoidance. This is discernment. You're not refusing communication forever. You're choosing the right time, the right state of mind. You're refusing to engage when the other person has no intention of genuine connection. And that's not just self-protection. It's a declaration that you are no longer easy to control. When you say this phrase confidently, without anger, without fear, you send a crystal-clear message. My emotions are sacred, and I alone choose when and where to open that door. You don't need to shout. You don't need to demand respect. Your composure is the definition of self-respect. And if you say it publicly in a family meeting, an intimate relationship, or a social setting, its power amplifies. Because others can now see clearly who is grounded in calm and who is manipulating chaos. When you walk away from a toxic conversation, you're not just protecting yourself. You're teaching yourself this truth. Peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing when to walk away. And sometimes that gentle refusal is the most powerful lesson you can teach anyone, that you will no longer be dragged down so they can feel taller. So next time you feel yourself being pulled into a conversation that leaves you breathless, confused, or disconnected from yourself, take a deep breath, hold your gaze, and say, "I'm not available for this conversation." Then walk away with your dignity intact and your calm unshaken. Part 7. I don't react the way I used to anymore. When calm becomes the mirror to their inner emptiness. I don't react the way I used to anymore. It sounds simple, but it's the sharpest blade that slices through a manipulator's illusion of power. Some transformations don't come with grand declarations. You don't need to shout, "I've changed," because sometimes the deepest shift is revealed not in what you say, but in what you no longer respond to. That person who once made you tremble, cry in secret, or feel like your world was collapsing can no longer reach you. Not because you've gone cold, but because you've taken back the reins of your emotional world. And for manipulators, especially narcissists, this is unbearable. Once upon a time, a single comment from them kept you up all night. A subtle insult sent you into a spiral of shame. A cold glance shattered your sense of self. You were trapped in an emotional maze, constantly fixing, pleasing, and striving to become good enough just to stop them from hurting you. But now, you don't react anymore. They press on an old wound, you stay silent. They try to create drama, you don't take the bait. They ignore you to create pressure, you remain at peace. And in that moment, you're not just healed, you've been reborn. I don't react the way I used to anymore isn't just a statement. It's an anthem of emotional liberation. It marks the moment you stepped out of the system they built, the one fueled by your pain, your panic, your patterns. They used to predict your every move. Now they can't read you at all. You've become unfamiliar territory, a map they can no longer follow. And what confuses them the most is not your distance. It's your peace no longer dependent on them. In psychology, this is called emotional detachment, a conscious and empowered decision to no longer let someone else drive your emotions. It's not emotional numbness. It's not apathy. It's strength. You still feel, but your emotions are no longer their weapon. This leaves the narcissist in emotional crisis. You were once their emotional supply. They relied on your anger, your tears, your pleading. Even your pain was a form of attention. But now, you're simply there, calm, unshaken, and uninterested in the game. And for them, that's terrifying. Because now they're left facing the one thing they've always tried to escape, the void inside themselves that no longer has you to fill it. When you stop reacting the way you used to, you do three powerful things. You break the manipulation cycle. No more feeding the fire. No more playing the part. You let the drama burn out, not with water, but with silence. You reclaim your power. You decide when and how to engage. You choose what's worthy of your energy. And that means you're no longer under their influence. You force them to face themselves. With no one left to provoke, they're stuck with their own reflection. And what they see is not power, it's absence. I don't react the way I used to anymore is also the truest expression of forgiveness, not to excuse them, but to free yourself from the grip of their mistakes. Forgiveness here doesn't mean forgetting. It means I refuse to let your actions hold power over me any longer. You don't have to announce your growth. You don't have to prove anything. If you no longer flinch at their silence, no longer cry at their distance, no longer fear their coldness, you've already changed. And the most beautiful part, you don't need them to acknowledge it. So the next time someone who once manipulated you tries to reenact the same old script, don't correct the story. Don't pick up the role. Just breathe. Stay grounded. And if you need to say anything at all, say it with your stillness. Or simply say, I don't react the way I used to anymore. Then smile. Walk away. No dramatic ending. No applause needed. Because you know your silence now is the final curtain in a play they no longer control. Power doesn't always come from winning an argument. Sometimes real strength lies in simply knowing that you no longer need to react. It's when you can stand in front of someone who once made you tremble and gently say, I'm not playing this game anymore. That's the moment you step off the stage they once directed, no applause needed, no spotlight, no grand exit, just silence. But a silence that carries the force of an emotional earthquake within. The 7 phrases you've just learned are not weapons for revenge. They're not designed to hurt anyone. They are tools to reclaim the sacred space of your soul, to help you stop living in fear, in automatic responses, or in the constant anxiety of being defined through someone else's eyes. Each of these phrases is simply a way of saying, I have the right to peace. And remember this. You don't need to respond to everything. Not everyone who questions you deserves an answer. Not every conversation is healthy. And not every judgment is truth. Most of the time, they're just projecting their own reflection, and you have the right not to accept that projection. You can learn to walk away, not because you're weak, but because you've become strong enough to know that continuing an unhealthy dialogue is a betrayal of yourself. And if you've ever felt lost in relationships built on control, if you've ever struggled to reclaim your voice, I hope this video has been a map not leading you back to someone else, but guiding you home to yourself, back to who you are, with your dignity intact, your boundaries honored, and your peace held tightly in hands that no one else gets to pry open. If something in this video touched a part of your soul, then this is your invitation. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and continue this journey with us. A journey of healing, awakening, and emotional freedom. Because you deserve to be free. You deserve a life where you no longer have to react to every provocation. And you deserve to live a story where you're the one writing every word,